So today I want to share something about spiritual freedom that I have experienced personally in my life. And what is shared here is safeguarded by God, by nature's God, on this platform. So I got a tree here. Don't laugh at my artwork. I'm not an artist. I'm just trying to get a point across here. Power structure here in the middle. Obviously, that's what feeds the trunks in real life for a tree. What I have written here on the tree roots is things that I personally dealt with in my life. I'm 43 years old here today, and it is January the 12th in 2024. And what I'm sharing today here is something that started when I was a teenager. And I didn't get true freedom from it until some time ago in 2023. Today is January 12th, 2024. I'm sharing this in hopes of helping other men and other women to possibly find true freedom in their life so they can live a fulfilled life like I have been able to since. So when I was "17 years old, I left home on really bad terms with my parents, my brothers and sisters, my entire family. And I'm standing here today not really comfortable sharing this, but I'm going to share it in hopes that it can help someone else, as I said. So, when I left at 17 years old, left home, had $10 in my pocket and a bag of clothes. And I grew up Amish. I've been Amish most of my life. More of my life I was Amish than not. I left a few years ago. And over the years, I had been associated with some very, we'll just say, I'd been associated with some very evil individuals, especially one in particular. I'm not going to say a name or gender or anything like that for the sake of the video, but it doesn't really matter. What matters is the point I want to bring across with my experience here. And what it was is, if I fast forward this from 17 years old to 2001, when I was 21 years old, almost 21 years old, in 01, when I fell off of a roof and fell 14 feet, damaged my left side, my shoulder, whiplashed my neck on the left side, messed up my rotator cuff, tore my stomach away from my diaphragm, dislocated it, damaged my spleen, punctured my lung, and messed up my hip, messed up 9 ribs in my back to the point where they wouldn't stay in position for 7 or 8 years. It went until I figured out what was wrong. After spending hundreds of thousands of dollars with medical doctors, etc., they never really found anything that could help me. We knew that my lungs, my spleen, my stomach, everything was messed up, but I didn't want to do surgery because surgeries are not always successful. So I just lived with it, and I got addicted to pain. I got addicted to pain a few years into this process, and I was 21 years old at the time when this happened, and I'm 43 years old now, and I just got relief from it, full freedom from it, not too long ago. And what it boiled down to, the reason I got this tree here, is I had started going to personal growth seminars, events, whatever you want to call it, just events on how to deal with life, deal with finances, etc. I had been in a lot of bad debt in my life. My marriage was bad. In 2011, I started going to these events on dealing with my past and dealing with life in general. Started figuring out that I had a lot of unforgiveness, and I'll read off what I have here on this root system of a tree. This was the power structure, obviously in the middle, feeding the roots, like in real life, obviously. Afraid to be authentic. Unforgiveness was a really big one for me, and revenge and hate. Those three were really big for me. And then lying, sexual addictions, immorality, ego, pretending to be someone I'm not, living two different lives depending on who was around, because I was in the Amish church for most of my life, and I had to live two lives in order to stay out of trouble. Had an alcohol addiction. I was a womanizer. I was all those things. Never content. And I was a debt slave. I had $1 million in debt in 2011. I was $1 million in debt. I'm not proud of this stuff, just for the record. I'm saying it because I want to help other men and other individuals understand that if they deal with these things, they're not alone. By the way, we live on the same planet. It's called planet Earth, and there is things like this that you will deal with. And I'm just saying, the reason I wrote these things down is because these are things that I've dealt with personally. I'm not saying anybody watching this deals with these things, but I did. And I dealt with it effectively as I stand here today. And I have some extreme freedom now. Does it sometimes come back? Yeah, it wants to. Some of the things do. Some of the things don't. Some of them do. Try to come back. Anyway, my point is, as I went to these events over the years, since 2011, and it's 2024 now, in 2023, I uprooted what I would call the whole thing of my things that I held on to all my life that were controlling me. And one in particular was, let me go back a little bit. So when I would go to these events, I'd always get some relief, because they would teach you on how to deal with your past, emotions, etc., unforgiveness, all those things. And I would always get some relief, but it would always come back. And I always had a lot of pain in my left side, in my rib cage, because I had those 9 ribs out of place, and they wouldn't stay in position ever since I was 21 years old when I had that accident. And I would go to chiropractors 2 or 3 times a week sometimes, like all the time actually. And had 3 ribs that would never stay in position for very long. And after going to these events all these years, one night I was talking to someone, an individual that I confided in, and I began to tell this individual some of my past, my unforgiveness, my sexual immorality, debt, $1 million in debt. Back when I was $1 million in debt, I had $30,000 a year net income in 2011. And I have since paid off all that debt completely. And I was telling this individual about my experience. And I shared with this individual some things about my past especially in this realm right here, where it says sexual addictions, immorality, and debt. It was money and those two things right there that were holding me back. And I began to tell this individual about some things that I did that I wasn't proud of, that I had never told anybody else in my life, ever, to the depth that I told this person that night. And what happened about an hour later is I got deliverance from all this stuff. And I was shown later that it was like a tree. And that's why I drew this tree. Because I was shown later when I had an out-of-body experience that every time I'd go to these events, I'd get one little root system, but I never got to the power structure that was feeding all these things. And the power structure I was shown for myself personally was directly related to money and immorality in a sexual realm that I had held on to. And I don't want to go into a whole bunch of detail on this video in that area, but that's what it was. And it was holding me back all these years. And when that deliverance came, one other thing, I had been addicted to pain. I had made pain a part of my life more than I knew. And I had become addicted to it to the point where I didn't know how to live without it, because I had pain in my back since 2001 when I fell and had all that damage. And I had coughed up blood for 10 or 15 years. It had gotten so bad to the point 7 years ago that I had to have hemorrhoid surgery because I had so much indigestion from my ribs being out of position. And if you've never had ribs out of position, it's very painful. I dealt with it for most of my adult life, since I was 21 years old, and I'm 43 now. So when that power structure got uprooted that night, and I got deliverance after I shined light on all these things into great detail with this individual, the pain that I had dealt with all these years went out with that. And I was shown that it was lodged between my heart and my rib cage, where the three ribs would never stay in position. It was lodged there. The darkness, or the dark emotions, etc., the dark entity, whatever you want to call it. Call it a spiritual thing if you want to, whatever. The pain went out. Now, I don't go to chiropractors 2 or 3 times a week anymore. I go about once every 3 or 4 weeks. About every 4 weeks or so. Currently, I go to the chiropractor now instead of 2 or 3 times a week, because my ribs stay in position. Because I dealt with the emotions that I was harboring. And I was shown that night, when this happened, my heart, I felt like I was having a heart attack. My heart was on fire. It was burning off everything that was unneeded for me to live a fulfilling life. And it took about an hour for that to all take place. It was a very crazy hour of my life that night, with my wife praying over me, and it was a crazy experience. But today, I'm free. And I have more energy than I have had since I was 21 years old. And it's an amazing life to be free from all these things. Was it easy to get rid of these things and be honest with this person that night and go into great detail of my past? No, it wasn't easy, but it was worth it. Did the people deserve to be forgiven that I was holding on to and revenging and hating and all these things? They probably didn't deserve to be forgiven, but guess what? I deserve to be free. So that's what I had to come to. I don't care if they deserve to be forgiven or not. The Bible says forgive 70 times 7. So that's like 490 times. The point is, for me personally, forgiveness set me free. Immorality set me free after I released it and shined a light on it. These things want darkness. They don't want you to talk about it. These emotions. And I was showing, I don't know if I shared this earlier, but the power structure here I hadn't dealt with fully. That's why I was holding on to it all these years, most of my life, because I hadn't dealt with the power structure that was feeding all these roots. And I want to read something here that I found interesting. Some people would say this was a total spiritual thing, and maybe it was. Either way, I got freedom from it. What I found in here in the Bible, it reads in Matthew 7, verse 16, it says, "You shall know them by their fruits. Do men gather grapes of thorns or figs of thistles? Even so, every good tree brings forth good fruit, but a corrupt tree brings forth evil fruit. A good tree cannot bring forth evil fruit, neither can a corrupt tree bring forth good fruit. Every tree that brings not forth good fruit is hewn down and cast into the fire. Wherefore, by their fruits ye shall know them." I just thought that was an interesting thing to read, to go in with my experience. I hope that this message will bless someone to live a free and fulfilling life. Be blessed.